Do we know how many people registered for this?
Like 130 in the first day it opened, apparently.
Oh,
Everyone's flown in. You can see the number at the bottom, just like ripping up.
yeah.
I'm gonna give it a few more seconds here to get everybody into the chat and into the seminar room, and then we'll get going in just a few minutes here. One more minute and then we'll get going. My name is Trevor Callies. I'm one of the white coats in the Cocktail Apprentice Program. With me, I've got John Darragon, one of the original Cocktail Apprentices, and BC Hoffman with Johnnie Walker. So I'm going to turn it over to BC for a few minutes here, just to give everybody a little bit of intro. BC.
Hello, and congratulations, apprentices. First of all, thank you all for allowing us to present to you today, as well as thank you to the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation team. Thank you. But seriously, thank you very much. My name is BC Hoffman, and I'm here representing Johnnie Walker to share some very, very exciting news. But first, I'd like to give you a brief background on this 200-year-old brand. Look, John Walker started as a grocer and a tea blender before ever transitioning into blending Scotch whiskeys. I mean, he was legitimately an OG of his time. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of consistency in the single malts that were being produced. So Mr. Walker began blending these whiskeys, much like he did his teas, to give this really consistent and smooth quality product each and every time for his guests. Now, this was just one of many elements that set him on a path of innovation and evolution, much as you are all going on right now in this apprentice program. Now, as you all know, cocktail culture has evolved drastically since its very beginning. The trends, the fads, pop culture as a whole has driven bartenders to challenge what has been to what will be. And John Walker is now Johnnie Walker, and they're launching their Johnnie Walker High Rye. So the High Rye blended Scotch whiskey from Johnnie Walker, that is giving bartenders just like you all a new product in a rapidly growing category to have fun with. And I wanted to showcase a classic cocktail as an example of where you can start with the new Johnnie Walker High Rye. What I'm going to be demonstrating today is going to be a Manhattan. It's classic, it's bold, and it's timeless. Now, Johnnie Walker High Rye was created using whiskeys with taste profiles that are inspired by Johnnie Walker Black Label. The High Rye has the different malts from Cardew, Cole Lila, Glenkinchie, and Kleinlich. They're then blended with rye that's distilled from the Tiananic, as well as Cameron Bridge distilleries, to create a totally unique tasting profile from the Johnnie Walker Black Label. So why mix with it? Well, let me tell you, using Johnnie Walker High Rye provides a really rich rye spiciness and these creamy, dreamy vanilla notes that really play well with the complexity of the sweet vermouth and the aromatic bitters that we're going to be using in this Manhattan. So for making this Manhattan, we're going to start with 1.5 ounces of our Johnnie Walker High Rye. Pour that right into our Yari glass with ice. Then we've got 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. Any sweet vermouth will do ya. Couple dashes of aromatic bitters. Give that a quick stir. Make sure you get it chilled and nicely diluted while simultaneously having all those notes come out. We're just going to take a double rocks glass, fine strain over fresh ice. And then we're just going to garnish that with 2 brandied cherries on a skewer, like so. Simple. Now, I urge you to try making these classic cocktails in their traditional form. And that way you can really see how well Johnnie Walker High Rye stands up on its own. And this is also a great starting point for all of you to be creative and innovative when mixing with Johnnie Walker. Now, when it comes to less is more, it's worth noting that Johnnie Walker Black Label's signature smokiness is a really simple and easy way to elevate a highball. So the dark tropical fruit notes, the smokiness, the oakiness that's found in the Black Label really opens up in a traditional highball, like, for example, a simple serve with ginger ale. So for that, what we're going to do, we're going to again take 1.5 ounces, this time with our Johnnie Walker Black Label. Pour that into a Collins glass with ice. And then we're just going to take our ginger ale, top it off with approximately 3.5 ounces of ginger ale. Again, give that just a quick little stir to incorporate those flavor notes and garnish that with an orange wheel right there, like so. This simple serve is just a really nice touch, as it allows you to notice really how complementary both these two Johnnie Walker blends are and how versatile each is for making cocktails, while simultaneously being rich enough for you to enjoy on their own. Now, again, simple, easy, the flavor notes really come through, and I greatly appreciate you guys taking the time. And again, congratulations on being selected for the Cocktail Apprentice Program. Thank you so much.
Thanks, BC. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yeah, welcome everybody to this next edition of the Full Hands In, Full Hands Out program. You guys just heard from BC with Johnnie Walker. Really excited to have brands like Johnnie Walker get involved in help putting on these sessions for us, which is great. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Trevor Callies. I'm one of the Cocktail Apprentice White Coats at Tales of the Cocktail. My day-to-day work is I'm the beverage director of a company called Donnelly Group, which has venues in Vancouver and Toronto up in Canada. I'm also the president of the Canadian Professional Bartenders Association. So for those of you in the US, it's not dissimilar to the USBG or other organizations thereof. We're very community driven and whatnot. I got involved in the Cocktail Apprentice Program in 2011 when it came for its very first Tales on Tour event up in Vancouver. And then from there, I've been involved ever since. I've attended 14 Tales of the Cocktails as a cap since 2011. That's a combination of both being in New Orleans at the primary event and of course a bunch of on tours in places like Mexico City, San Juan, and Edinburgh. Currently, I am in one of the white coats, which means that for the next 6 months, while we get closer and closer to Tales of the Cocktail, I'll be working very closely with people like John Darragon, Chris Delavi, and of course, Alex Smith with Tales of the Cocktail to get ready so we can get back into the motions of Tales of the Cocktail in person. So with me today, I've got John Darragon. I'm gonna let John tell his own bio and resume because it is a storied one. John?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So as TK said, I'm John Darragon. I've been a apprentice since the start of the program in 2008 and been to every New Orleans one except 1 year that I missed, which was the last one we had, I guess, in person 2 years ago, pre-COVID. So my background is myself, along with Don Lee, we opened up PDT in New York City, and we were both managing that bar for a few years. And I also have a strong technical background. I currently work for Resi, doing logistics and operational support for them. So if any of you use Resi as a consumer or as in your workplace, I'm basically responsible for keeping that running for everybody. And I also do a lot of the work with Tales regarding the recipe programming, which we'll talk about later. But basically consolidating all the recipes from for the seminars and spitting out recipe cards that could be used for the caps. So I'm the tech guy in the group. Not too active in bartending anymore, although I'm working a few projects here and there. But I think my bartending days may be somewhat in the past, which I miss, but still practice at home a lot.
There's an opportunity for a maitre d' with all that Resi experience. We'll put you at the front door.
But I don't like people too much, so.
So today we're talking about all things Cocktail Apprentice. We're going to go through basically a bit of a history of the Cocktail Apprentice Program, what we do, who we are, how it all got started, as well as our goals year to year. I do want to point out that the chat should be open. So if you guys, any attendees that have some questions as we go on, we're going to do our best to answer those closer to the end. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat group. We'll see it and we'll try to work in that content if we haven't already in our preparation for today. So but yeah, I think the best way to get started is to talk about why we do this. That we have a mission statement that we like to look at every year, which is our main purpose as Cocktail Apprentices, and our mission is to provide an environment where bartenders have the opportunity to develop logistics, leadership, and event management skills, which then in turn will foster professionalism and then develop future leaders. So I know that's a lot of big words there, but if you chop that up a little bit, you've got basically everything that the CAP program stands for. We are the hosts of Tales of the Cocktail and the attendees are our guests. We've always looked at it that way. The logistical side is exactly where I've managed to develop myself over the last 10 years of me coming to the Tales of the Cocktail and being a cocktail apprentice. Everything from managing the preparation of the recipe cards, which the program has definitely helped me out manage inventories on mass scale. The idea of leadership, taking what I've learned and then passing it on to other people, learning from the people around me, and then of course event management skills, being able to produce an event that sees tens of thousands of people attend year on year on year, and then turning that into being able to trickle it down to the people around me in my own community and beyond. So those are the things that we really look at. And we have some core values as well. So professionalism, I mean, that really speaks for itself. We like to be in the background at all of the seminars and all the events, but you can't really miss an apprentice when they walk into a room. We are, the people who have to sneak around and make sure that things run seamlessly in each of the events. So like learning and making sure that those logistical things are all planned out are super important, and then being professional in those rooms is of the utmost. Education is a huge part of it, right? Learning what we do and then taking it and then expanding it out to the new team and then beyond. Community is a massive part of what we are and who we are. The CAP network reaches over 500 people now that have gone through this program, and now instant family, instant friendship. And of course, hospitality, treating everyone as a guest. So those 4 core values are extremely important to us. What we do, we prepare and we batch for every single cocktail that is produced in a seminar and many events that happen in Tales of the Cocktail through that week. We take all of the recipes that are submitted by the presenters in single cocktails and sometimes not even full recipes, and then we have to turn them into cocktail batches that will then serve hundreds of guests a delicious sample example of that cocktail. So taking as we saw in the preview with that Johnnie High Rye Manhattan, we have to take that single cocktail and turn it into something that will serve a sample size for 250 people in a seminar, and then get that out to them in a very efficient manner. We work very closely with the full-time staff and the part-time staff of Tales of the Cocktail to determine what our product needs are for that week, what our schedule needs are that week. All the batch recipes have to be done, months in advance, so we know exactly what product we have to bring in. And then all of our goal is to make sure that everything runs flawlessly. And while we're doing all of that, we also want to ensure that we are giving ourselves time to develop and train and educate and grow closer to the team. So there's 68 people in 2019 that came down to Tales of the Cocktail as apprentices that we have to get to know and teach and learn from them. It's the CAP program in a nutshell. So John, where did it all get started?
So the quick story is back in 2008, Don Lee and I got approached by Phil Ward of MyOL fame to say, hey, do you want to come down to New Orleans and make some cocktails? We're like, sure, it sounds like fun. So we go down there knowing that we had to make cocktails for the seminars, but we didn't really have a grasp of the scale of it. And there was really no pre-planning for it. We went down there and basically were handed a stack of papers that were all of the presenters' recipes in a single cocktail format. And we sort of had to divine from that when the seminar was, where it was, how many people it was. So Don and I are sitting in the kitchen every morning manually with a calculator and a napkin, writing out these huge batch recipes. And we pasted them on the door in the kitchen, and it was the only copy we had. So we were like very protective of them. We're like, please don't spill anything on it because I don't want to have to do all the calculations again. In addition to that, there was no juicing program. Now we're lucky enough to have a ZoomX machine to be able to, and a juicing team that's dedicated to doing nothing but producing juice. And when I say producing juice, we're talking about hundreds of gallons a week of juice, mixed juices. And I think we have at this point juiced every imaginable vegetable or citrus, and even some that probably shouldn't have been juiced. We get requests for beet juice. I think the only thing we haven't squeezed is any nuts. We haven't done any nut milks, I don't think.
Please don't give them any ideas.
But we have a juicing team that works very hard. Back then, it was all hand juicing, so we literally have mountains and cases of limes and lemons, and we're having juicing contests in the kitchen to see who could juice the most amount of juice as quickly as possible. But we've come a long way. As I said, now we have automated machines and the juicing team. We have the recipe system that takes the recipes in and sort of lets the apprentice leadership team review them to make sure that we're not actually having to do any nut milks or anything, and also just reviewing the ingredients to make sure that everything that the presenters are requesting is something we can actually source in New Orleans or whatever city we may be in. And it's also doing things like converting from ounces. We moved to milliliters as the standard recipe sizing now instead of ounces. So we convert everything from ounces to milliliters. And also scaling up, we have logic in there, scale up bitters to be able to figure out how many dashes to ounces or milliliters we need of bitters. All that's done sort of transparently now, and it allows the apprentices to go on their phone or their iPad and actually pull up the recipe. So we're no longer limited to one single piece of paper that could get lost, which has happened a few times. So we've come a long way from 2008. It's definitely less of a trial by fire. I mean, it's still very hard work, but it's considerably easier each year we do it because we learn from our mistakes and sort of really refine our process every year. And of course, it changes, drastically because we switched hotels once already. So once we get into a rhythm, it seems we have to move to another hotel. It's the way Alex keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it when you said evolution is a key way to go. When this whole thing started off, it was basically a pretty ragtag group of bartenders that all basically knew each other from New York, right? 25 people came down to make 230 cocktails and probably, I would say, about 35 seminars that first year?
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, they were almost all New York bartenders, so we all knew each other. And then we had a very strong representation of New Orleans bartenders like Chris Hanna and Rhiannon. Mm-hmm. So luckily we were a tight crew and we worked really closely together, and we were definitely winging it though. Like we had a few sleepless nights, but in the end we did it.
And then do you remember how did you decide who was going to do what? Was it basically just like grab a recipe and figure it out and go do the batching, or whoever wanted to work with Dale, that's where you went?
Right. So we basically had all the recipes taped up on a big board, and people would just go over and grab a recipe, not knowing what it was, and that they would be responsible for figuring it out. And they didn't know who they were really working with. Right. At that point, I think a lot of the presenters were relatively unknown to a lot of these people. Being in New York, I'm lucky enough to run into Dale and Dave Wondrich pretty regularly. But, for most of these other people, it's their first experience with them. It's like, wow, I have to make 500 drinks of 500, blue blazers for Dale DeGroff seminar. I don't want to screw it up. So There was
And
no
that's
real
also
system
back,
in.
and that's back when they let us use fire too in the hotel rooms.
Yeah.
When you look at where we went to from that 2008 class to 2019, which was the last time we were all together in person at Tales of the Cocktail, I mean, you know, going from recipes written down on paper napkins to an automated recipe system that now just spits out all of the information that we need for purchasing and preparation and whatnot. We've gone to the automated juicing machines from Elbow Juicers. At one point, we had a full team of paid staff that was dedicated to do this juicing for them. So we would literally just walk in there daily with a piece of paper, give them the volumes of all the different juices we need, and then it would show up a couple hours later. Made things a little bit easier on ourselves for sure. We went from 25 caps to 68 at peak. You know, we did 170 different recipes. I mentioned earlier that there's been over 500 people that have gone through this program since its initial in 2008. And I think, if I remember correctly, I don't have this number exactly, but we've had over 20 different countries represented in the Tales of the Cocktail program as well, in terms of cocktail apprentices. So it's no longer just, you know, the major cities like in the United States, like New York and San Francisco and Boston and Chicago, which at one point it very much dedicated to the US. I was always wondering why they ever let this kid from Canada be a part of this program. But it's very much an international thing. And I think that's really what drives that evolution of the CAP program, is the more people we get from these other markets around the world, the stronger we can get, because we all learn a little bit more when there's, you know, a little bit different background and different ways to do things depending on where you come from. So like, how does the whole thing work? I mean, I mentioned as well, like we start planning for Tales of the Cocktail pretty much for next year. We pretty much start planning it for the day that Tales ends is when we start talking about next year. But how the whole thing goes is we get there a few days ahead as the cocktail apprentices to prepare our work areas. As John mentioned, we are in different hotels all the time. So since I've been involved, we've been at 2 different hotels in New Orleans. Every time we go on tour, we have to learn about a new hotel or a new workspace. We have to get to know the people who operate those hotels and be very mindful that we're in somebody else's house. Sure, most of the people in attendance, you guys all work in your bar, and it's a very comfortable place to come in and work every day. When you take a step off site to go to a different workspace, you know, you're basically climbing over other people, and you have to be mindful that you're in their house. So you have to basically take care. A lot of it's shared space. So we're incoming hundreds upon hundreds of bottles of liquor and syrups and prep items. We have to coordinate where those land in the hotel and then where they're going to live, so everybody knows where they are as we go through day to day. This is basically 72 hours of arriving, setting up, and getting ready before all Tales of the Cocktail kicks off on that first day. All of the new cocktail apprentices arrive a few hours before we get into our first group session. And then from there, we basically have just a day and a half to 2 days to do some full training sessions. This is everything from introducing the new caps to the recipes for the very first time, having them going through and learning how to read our recipe cards, how to look at our batching information, how we do things at Tales of the Cocktail as a team might be a little bit different from what they're used to doing in their own bars and when they run their own events. But those group sessions are extremely important for us to make sure that everybody gets on the same page and runs the event the same way. You know, we always accept new ideas and new opportunities, but we can't necessarily implement them that year, but we're always eager to learn how other people are doing things so we can then evolve our program to be just a little bit better and a little bit more efficient for following years. So basically what you have is a group of, you know, 65 to 70 strangers walking into a room, sitting down, and within a day and a half to 2 days, what we have to do, our challenge as the apprentice leaders in the white coats, is to take those 60 odd people and turn them into basically what I would refer to as one of the best bar teams on the planet. We answer any questions people might have about the seminars that are coming their way. We go through every recipe in depth in small breakout sessions. We go through every inch of our workspaces in the hotel. If any of you have spent any time in these large scale hotels, you'll understand that they are basically labyrinth mazes. that we have to essentially learn all the nooks and crannies and back area passageways that we can get from one side of, in the past it was the Monteleone to the Royal Sonesta, and this year will be the Ritz, to get to our seminar room. So it's basically like a lost and found of how do I get from here to there, and making sure that I get there on time. Our team is divided up into four what we call platoons, which is basically 4 primary teams. And then within those teams, we have smaller teams, which are called squads. And then that is our Cocktail Apprentice program. We have, that's the way we design our teams. That's the way we design our schedule. Each platoon will have its own area on each day of Tales of the Cocktail that they're responsible for. So everybody throughout the course of a week will have an opportunity to see pretty much everything that the Tales of the Cocktail Apprentice program will do throughout the week. So from the kitchen to seminar presentations to dropping tastings to batching cocktails, a cocktail apprentice will see almost all of it throughout the course of the week based on our schedule. Our primary goal is to make sure that every cocktail apprentice that comes in learns something that week and does something that's going to excite them, that's going to teach them something new. I mean, we want to make sure that people's skills are being tested, but also we want to make sure that it's fulfilling. So if you're excellent at batching and you've done batching because you run events all the time, let's get you in the kitchen. If you spend most of your time in the kitchen, let's get you in the front of house seminar rooms. So we rotate a lot to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity. The work schedule is long. It's very, very tight, very strict. As John mentioned, there can be some sleepless nights. There can be some early mornings. We spend a lot of time looking at the tasks ahead. So we make sure that every minute that we are working extremely hard, we are getting ourselves an extra minute to, have fun as a group, to get to know each other. And then of course, making sure that we're learning and growing as a team. All that being said, not all of our time in New Orleans is spent in the kitchen. It's not spent in the batching rooms. It's not spent in the seminar rooms. We want to make sure that we're giving ourselves as much time as possible to enjoy the wonderful city of New Orleans. Getting out and seeing all those historical bars that are responsible for creating so many cocktails. Not just the fancy cocktail bars, but the dive bar culture in New Orleans is unbelievable. Some of our favorite places to go to wind down are just blocks away from the hotels, and they're the unsung heroes of New Orleans are those off the beaten path bars where you can just kind of go in and be invisible and just see how people treat such an amazing drinking city that is NOLA. We also have a thing called Cappy Hour, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the day. After we complete our work day, we get together, we decompress, we talk about our wins, we talk about our opportunities, but we also invite some special guests to come and do CAP only seminars and CAP only presentations. So we have an opportunity to get a little taste of what the Tales of the Cocktail attendees are receiving. This is anything from presenters from previous seminars that happened during the day, Cocktail Apprentice alumni, people coming in and talking about how they've grown from the Tales of the Cocktail Apprentice program, brand ambassadors, and basically the who's and the what's of the cocktail industry. And by being a part of these like after hours seminars, it really gives us an opportunity to, learn, to grow, to understand exactly like what else is out there. And we get to really get some insight from some really amazing people. So John, I think you can probably speak to, how somebody can really grow personally and professionally, just being there from, your time at PDT to becoming a cocktail apprentice. And just, I know you travel a lot. So maybe you can touch on, some of the other benefits of the apprentice program outside of Tales of the Cocktail week.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I travel quite extensively for work, and I don't think there's been a city or country I've gone to in the past few years that I haven't been able to meet up with a CAP at their bar and sit at their bar and watch them working in their own, I don't want to say watch, but spend time with them working in their own bar. Like I was just in Las Vegas last week, and I actually met up with 2 former apprentices that were actually running their own bars now in Vegas. So it was great being able to have that feeling of hospitality extended to whatever. And I've been to Tel Aviv We have a cap family in Tel Aviv. Pretty much any major city, and even some much smaller cities, there's apprentices. I don't think there's I can't remember the last time I've been to a city and not been able to meet up with an apprentice at their bar or for a drink. So it's definitely a huge sense of family. Once you're a cap, you're sort of always a cap in heart, especially if you get the tattoo. We have our own tattoo. I think TK and I are, there's 3 people that don't have the tattoo at this point, I think. AK, you and myself. So sort of you could be at a bar and you'll see our little pineapple tattoo, and you'll know that it's pretty recognizable part of the industry now. And the other thing that's great, when you're in New Orleans, you're wearing your cap chef's jacket, and people stop you in the street and thank you for all the hard work you're doing. So it's like a huge badge of honor to be able to be in the apprentice program and be walking around New Orleans and people coming up and thank you for all the hard work you're doing. So we definitely work hard, but there's a lot of rewards in the back end, especially when brands approach us on the leadership team and say, hey, we're doing an event in this city. Do you know any staff that could work it? Our first thought is to go to the caps that we know in that city and do an introduction, because we know, and the brands also know that because they went through the cap program, they know how to do batches really well and know how to work efficiently and smartly. So when we do an introduction to these brands for caps that want to work an event, it comes at a pretty high level to them, and so it's part of one of the benefits of being in the apprentice program. Is you sort of have this badge of honor that you could wear around, and almost all the brands are aware of the cap program because many of them support us. So it's definitely one of the big benefits. I'm trying to think of anything else. And also for cappy hours, TK mentioned, once you're a cap, you sort of have the ability to come into these cappy hours. Even if you're not apprenticing, you can come in as a former cap and re-experience the sort of what the first year cap people are going through. You can associate there's definitely a feeling of association when you're a first time cap and you look back at or look forward to next year's caps. You could see what they're going through and definitely understand the feelings that they're going through, because you're so high on adrenaline and so tired from working, you become in this sort of cap state. And I think unless you do it, you really can't experience. It's almost like going to war.
Yeah, it's
which is an analogy we used a few times.
Yeah, it's very much a you mentioned the cappy hour. We put on these seminars after hours for the current cocktail apprentices, but half of the room sometimes gets filled up with former apprentices, and everyone's meeting, greeting. They want to know who these new cocktail apprentices are, who the red coats are. They want to see their old friends that are on the gray coat team. And of course, as years go on, you start seeing how much the generational effect is of the Tales of the Cocktail Apprentice program. A couple things I can speak of just to add to the professional benefits and the personal benefits. We've seen a bunch of strangers show up from multiple different cities, work together at Tales of the Cocktail, and then as apprentices. And then 3 weeks later, you'll see a Facebook event or a Facebook post go up that all these caps from all 3 different cities all over the United States are all moving to the same city to create like a new cap house. So now you've got, 4 former caps living in one place, all moving to a different city. We've had cap opportunities, like it's basically like a hiring fair as well. So if you've ever wanted to go from a small market to a big market, you're meeting people that work in these large cities that are responsible for bar programs like PDT, like Death & Co., like Nomad. So you instantly have basically this line item on your resume that you've been a cap, and now you are essentially like you've got an amazing flag on your resume that just allows you to walk into these amazing bar programs and apply for a job, and they already know who you are, and then suddenly you already know who these people are as well. So basically, one of the original white coats, Leo Robichek, would basically just come in and just tap 15 people on the shoulder, and then suddenly he's able to open up a new Nomad in a new city.
Yeah, I think Leo single-handedly staffed almost all of his bars with caps.
Yeah.
Even in Las Vegas, there was a Nomad in Las Vegas, which is still there, but Leo opened another bar called Super Frico, and he basically went back to all the apprentices he knew in Las Vegas and hired his entire bar staff basically with apprentices there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely great networking.
Yeah.
And we're actually having I think we're having our first cap marriage as well. We have two apprentices that got engaged.
There's cap
there's gonna be
marriages and cap babies as well.
That's true. Yeah, they're babies.
Yeah. A couple other things just to note on the ongoing benefits. I mean, there's basically, you know, there's no city that I can think of as well that I can go to without having a cap to hang out with. But also, you know, it's a very open door market. So you know, very much like a friends and family opportunities of people who work at hotels to get some great hotel rates. I know caps that literally will not ever stay at a hotel because there's so many couches to surf on when they go traveling across the US and all over the world. You know, we talked at length about these presenters. I can't count the amount of times that I get asked or emailed by presenters and brand ambassadors when they're on their travels across Canada and across the world. It's like, where I'm going to city X, are there any cocktail apprentices there that I can go visit and say hi to? So not only do you have a place to go and visit and expand your network to CAP alumni, but then once you're part of this program, you're now on that list where people are trying to find out where CAPs are working so they can go visit, patronize their bars, you know, drop off a little, just a little goodwill or some hospitality, which is really exciting. A couple other things just to note, if you've ever wondered about doing Bar 5 Day, there's an annual CAP scholarship where we award a handful of scholarships out to former CAPs that want to take on the arduous task of completing Bar 5 Day. We've had, I think, over 20 CAPs go through the program and take Bar 5 Day at a drastically reduced effort in terms of financially. And then even from there, there's an ongoing educational scholarship that we like to put out that will flow in and out throughout the years as they go by. So if you're looking to expand your professional educational system, like taking WSETs or something else, we have an application that's always open for that. We have a little bit of money that we can spend on former CAPs throughout the year as it goes by. There's been health and wellness aid. If someone gets hurt or injured, we've been able to offer that to former CAPs. And then, of course, the ongoing expansive list of distilleries and other opportunities. So we've managed to take groups of cocktail apprentices to places like Jameson, to Olmeca. John, where else have the CAPs gone to in terms of distillery tours? Altos or Absolute, I think, as well.
Yeah, we did Elix, and we went to Middleton, Jameson. I'm trying to think where else. I know we went to the Fernet Branca distillery as well when we were in Buenos Aires.
So there's an ongoing list of places where brands just want to host us. And when I say that we're going on these distillery tours, we literally take over the distillery grounds for a few days, and we're the only people, the only guests there. So it's a real amazing way to kind of get an insight and get that deep dive tour as well. So really excited.
Right, and these aren't the normal distillery tours. These are like technical, tailored to the CAP program, usually with the master distiller in a lot of cases. So it's not like the, generic consumer distillery tour. This is we get to taste some really great stuff. We get to ask questions to the distillers in most cases, and get shown great hospitality. Yeah,
and then once the Tales of the Cocktail Week is behind us, I mean, we as the CAPs, we have all of these contacts that we've been working with on the presenter side. So once Tales is over, the connection that we make with these presenters and with these people, it continues as well. So not only do we develop this amazing team of new friends within the Cocktail Apprentice Program, but we've also got now access to, email David Wondrick if we find that we have a question for him, or Dave Arnold is always a great one who comes by. He's such a big part of the CAP program behind the scenes, as well as in the seminars that he presents. but now we've got connections with these people. So in terms of networking, you're meeting, dozens upon dozens of these great cocktail and spirits minds that it lasts well beyond the apprentice program. So, but that's the Tales of the Cocktail Apprentice Program in a nutshell. We definitely have some time for some questions in the chat. A couple things that I want to, while you guys are typing out your questions in the chat, I just want to touch on some deadlines. I imagine one or two are going to be about how to apply. We do have some deadlines coming up. We're going to be releasing the application in about 2 weeks for returning caps. That's anybody who has capped before. That goes live early December. So you must have already worked as a cap to be considered for one of the gray coat positions. We keep that open for about 1 month. And just as we're about to close that returning cocktail apprentice application, we open up the red coat, which is our new cap. So anybody on this seminar who has never been a cap before or has capped on tour but not down in New Orleans, we open that in early January, which is January 3rd. We keep that open for just under 1 month, so we're going to close that January 31st. In terms of the application, it's very much a essay driven. So we're basically trying to give a few questions that open up and give us an opportunity to learn who you are. When we judge the applications and when we assess them, we do it double blind. So we take away all of the who and wheres from every apprentice. So we have no idea your name, your resume. We don't know where you work. We don't know where you have worked. And we go through line by line we look at, for the first round, only what you're writing in those essay questions. So we want to get the insight on who you are before we go, before we figure out, we want to figure out who you are as a person before we figure out who you actually are and where you actually work.
Yep. We try to make it as anonymized as possible, as TK said, so that we have a diverse selection. We do, towards the end, when it comes to tie breaking, we do try to pick geographically representative amounts of people. So obviously there's a lot of applications from New York and San Francisco and Chicago in the past. We can't just take an entire class from New York like we did the first year. So we try to, give opportunities to people who are bartending in smaller markets who don't have the chances to experience running into these seminar presenters as much as people in bigger cities do. So looks like we got quite a few questions in the Q&A too. Let me see if there's any quick ones here.
Yeah, John, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm gonna have to rely on you to.
Okay. Yeah, there's a little Q&A tab on the bottom. So is there a time requirement for how long someone has to be working in the industry to apply for eligibility to apply? I don't believe so, unless something's changed.
No, I mean, I've always, when I'm looking at the new cap applications, I'm always looking for, who you are and where you come from. And we've had people who have been bartenders for just a few months that have come into the apprentice program. And it's been great. I mean, having a mix of relatively new people to our industry to the really, really long tenured people is important to me as well. So.
Yeah. Can I be a cab if I've never been to Tails? Absolutely. I mean, it definitely helps going to Tails just so you know kind of what you're getting in for. But there's no requirement. You don't have to have gone to Tails.
Yeah, I mean, I can look at this question in two ways. I mean, I went to Tales of the Cocktail for the first time as a consumer in 2009 and immediately felt left out because I saw the apprentices running around doing some crazy work. And I literally just wondered the whole time I was in the seminars that I was attending, like, how do I get that job? I figured it was local bartenders. I had no idea it was, Phil Ward and John Darragon running around doing all the heavy lifting. But I mean, there's a lot to be said for going as a consumer the first time or at some point in your life, but there's also a lot to be said. I don't think I could ever go back to Tales as a consumer and not have immense fear of missing out on what's going on behind the cap front line.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, the first Tales I ever went to was as a consumer, and I was in awe of it. I had no idea what was happening back of house, and I went back as a cap, kind of with that unknown. It was definitely an experience I'll never forget.
No.
Just quickly check these questions. I saw the dates for Tails this summer, but when do caps need to get to New Orleans, and do they stay after Tails? So we provide housing starting typically a day before for redcoats
Yeah, 2
through the
days.
end of, 2 days before, through the end of Tails. So that's covered. You'll be sharing a room with a fellow cap. And then if you decide, you could stay after Tails, but it would be at your own expense for sure.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to stay after Tails, because the New Orleans you see during Tails is not the New Orleans that it normally is. It's definitely a lot of people out partying, professional bartenders out drinking a lot. So it's definitely the New Orleans that happens after Tails is much more representative of the city. And not everything in New Orleans is Bourbon Street, which is an important thing.
There's so much to see and do in New Orleans as well. So I would highly recommend, if you can find an extra couple days on the front end or the back end, definitely do so. We've typically have a few apprentices that decide to change rooms and then room share for 3 or 4 days after. I mean, the work schedule during the day is pretty fierce, so there's not a lot of time to go out and explore and see all the great things. So it's definitely worthwhile to go. I mean, a huge part of what we do during the week of Tails is to try to get out and do some group activities at some storied places. But yeah, it's typically you arrive as a redcoat, you'll arrive about 2 days before Tales of the Cocktail gets started. That's where we'll do all of our training. Then there's the week of Tails, and then there's typically 1 day afterwards where we, finish our cleanup, move out of the hotel that we're in, and then we have that last night to really go out and just experience, some non-work hours as a team. So,
all right, we'll do one more question here, and then we'll return to our regularly scheduled program. In the essays, do you want us to exhibit our experience with the industry as well as outside of it, or should we focus on life outside of bars we have worked at? So the essay questions range the gamut from simple things like, please give us one of your favorite cocktail recipes, which just lets us get a little insight of how you create your cocktails, to, I forgot what some of the other questions are, to what bar programs. I think they're more generic, just to see, are you spending thought answering these questions, or are you just on autopilot answering them? Like, I think one of my favorite questions in the past was, what is one of your favorite bar programs that you have visited recently, and what made it special to you?
Yeah, I mean, the questions are driven for us to really learn who you are as a person and what your interests are outside of it. So in the past, we've had questions about the last 3 books you've read, not necessarily cocktail books. We're looking about, what inspires you, what do you do in your spare time? We really want the applications to show not just that you competed in, a global cocktail competition and now have, gone on to do other things in terms of that. But we want to know who you are as a person, what your community is like in your hometown. It's really driven to not your work resume, and it's really your personal life, and not such a deep dive. We just want to know, about yourself. So we're going to talk about part 2 and part 3 in a few minutes, about what part 2 and part 3 of these sessions that we're doing. So we'll get you a little, if you attend that one, you'll really understand how we look at the applications. But definitely want you to showcase in those essay answers, and you'll see the questions when the applications go live. We definitely want you to showcase, honesty in those answers and really,
Right.
really go deep there. Colin
Yeah, I
Simpson's
think the
got a-
biggest, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just
Oh,
to
you
say,
go
I
ahead.
think the biggest takeaway for answering the essay questions is, for me, I want to see people investing some actual thought and time in answering them, and not just doing like boilerplate answers. It's like, what is your favorite bar program? Oh, I liked my corner bar because I know the people. It's not really insightful. So spend a little extra time and answer the questions to give us a picture of what you want us to see. Tell us about yourself. Tell us, sort of what drives you to be wanting to be part of the CAP program.
Mm-hmm. And then Colin Simpson asked a few questions there on the side there. I just want to touch on real quick about supply chains and substituting products or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, we've done seminars that have involved some of the most intense bar programs in the world, and had to replicate their cocktails. You know, place from the aviary to nightjar and beyond. So as we get further and further into the development of cocktail culture, I mean, the seminars get more and more intricate. There's not always an opportunity for us to get a random ingredient that only exists in one country, that, you know, it doesn't distribute to Louisiana as well. So it's all that work that gets done ahead of time with the presenter that allows us for substitutions and self-supplied items and whatnot. So we make sure that we are crossing all those bridges as we come to it, and being very, very thorough in the communication from the apprentice program to the presenters. In 2019, we dealt with Tropical Storm Barry, which definitely inhibited us from getting a lot of our orders in on time. So there's always something that's going to pop up to perhaps prevent us from getting the exact cocktail, but we always make sure that we're, you know, working with the presenters, getting them in the batch room, so we're giving the best example of their cocktail. In terms of citrus going flat, shaking to order, everything is done at the exact moment that we need to get the best example of the cocktail in front of people. So it's all about timing, and it's all about that teamwork environment. And then in terms of creating brand representation, we work very closely with the brands and the sponsors of every seminar to ensure that they're getting the brand in front of the guests and the attendees as much as possible. So whether or not that's putting a bottle up front, working the brand's logos into the seminars, into the PowerPoints that the presenters are using, etc. So we make sure that the brand is taken care of, and that usually typically will fall on the presenter to make sure that their sponsor is well represented. And then in terms of cocktail touches, I mean, we have seen, I would say we've seen so many different variations of how many different garnish styles and touch and different prep items that we've had to use. It goes from, you know, as easy as making a daiquiri to order to 80 Ramos gin fizzes at once landing on the table at the same time. So
Right.
it can be very extensive, and it can be very rudimentary.
Yeah,
That's,
one of the more memorable ones was, I don't know how many people are familiar with Buena Vista in San Francisco. We had the actual bartenders. They're known for their Irish coffees. They make tens of thousands of Irish coffees every day. They're the largest consumer of Tomar Dew in the world in terms of product buying. And they actually brought these career bartenders out from Buena Vista to make Irish coffees for an entire seminar room. And it's only 3 ingredients: sugar, coffee, whiskey, and cream, 4 ingredients. But they were so particular in the temperature of the coffee, the glasses. They actually brought their own glassware out in it. So we're working with these bartenders who've been making these Irish coffees for forever, and they were just so fanatical about doing it. And, you know, just small little techniques that they were doing, we learned pretty great things. And, you know, we even go the other extreme is when you have someone coming out from aviary with their portholes, and we were making porthole drinks for 200 people, which was very traumatic.
definitely there is a range. So yeah, as we wrap up, I just want to point out, keep your eyes on the Tales of the Cocktail website. There are 2 more seminars that are going to speak to specifically the Cocktail Apprentice Program coming up. The first one is December 9th at the same time, 1 p.m. Central Time, where we're going to be going through the application process and how that all works. Some insider tips on how we read the applications and how we grade them. Registration for that should be live on the website. So just hit Tales of the Cocktail and go there. And then there's going to be a part 3, which is going to be just a little last minute deep dive into any questions that people still might have as the seminar applications go, or the application process goes live. So that's January 13th in 2022 in the same time at 1 p.m. And I just want to remind everybody that, you know, bartending experience isn't necessarily required. We've had people from brand positions take part in the Cocktail Apprentice Program. We've had people who run liquor stores take part in the Cocktail Apprentice Program. Really what it comes down to is that community-minded thing? And are you going to be able to bring back our values and our mission statement to the people around in your neighborhood and in your city? So we're really looking for people who are passionate about bartending, passionate about hospitality, and really just passionate about the program and looking to spread it around to their community. John, do you have any last minutes insight on the Cocktail Apprentice Program we would have missed? Any horror stories?
Oh, so many
Positive?
horror stories, but those are best discussed over a drink at the end of the night in a local place. No, I think for me, the Tales program, it's been such a huge part of my life. I've met some of my best friends through the program. And it's an experience you'll never forget. You definitely work hard, but I have stories that I could tell that you will also have your own stories, which will be really, it's a great experience. I can't stress enough, especially if you're from a smaller market. Like the people, we're treated, as I think I mentioned earlier, we're treated like VIPs. We have access to go to almost any event that's worth going to in New Orleans in terms of the after seminar parties. So I encourage you to apply. That definitely doesn't hurt to apply, and I wish you all the best of luck. Oh, I think you're muted there, TK.
Yeah, the application alone is a learning opportunity for everybody. And, just because you apply and don't get in this year, I mean, we have a limited amount of spots that we can bring in each year, but we definitely want everybody to take the time, fill out those applications and go forward. Just as we wrap up here, I'd like to thank Johnnie Walker for helping us put on this seminar and put on that little session at the start of the webinar. I definitely want to thank Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. I want to thank John Daragon and Alex Smith, who definitely keeps us on our toes and making sure that we're putting everything together for these seminars and being on time and whatnot. And everyone for attending today. This is great. I'm hoping that we allowed you some insight onto what the Cocktail Apprentice Program is all about, and hopefully see everyone's applications as we go live in the next 60 days here.
At least for me, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. And if you have any questions, or if you're in New York, need bar recommendations.
Okay, thanks again, everybody.